But, in my generation, we were fumbling around, not knowing how to get what we deep inside really wanted. And the men were like, well, now that I don't have to do this anymore, I'm not going to do it anymore. So I'm going to go back to suggesting that it was women who gave men permission to be irresponsible.
Welcome to Manosphere Highlights Daily, where we call out feminist foolishness, expose women's hypocrisy, dismantle double standards, and stand up for men. Shout out to Patreon gang member Mr. J. Hu for this video topic request. I hope I didn't butcher your name, my man. Appreciate you for supporting the channel. Salute! Today we're highlighting some serious red flags and hard truths from ex-Feminist Darleen Lev in an interview with the Radical Center. It's a full hour of grown woman reflection. And trust me, there's food for thought. Links in the description if you want to see the whole thing. We're going to pull out a few key moments from the interview that men need to know, not just for awareness, but for survival. Let's set the tone.
Hello, today I'm speaking with Darleen Lev. And Darleen, you're a writer who reached out to me recently after listening to a couple of conversations that we've had on this channel, I think for specifically some of the solid ground conversations. And if you don't mind, I'll just read real quickly the paragraph that you sent me, because I think it really sets up an interesting discussion. So you said, I was so taken by our childless women ruining the world that I plan to incorporate the dialogue into a chapter/essay for the book you're working on. I heard a lot of the cause of the problem put on men. I agree and have experienced this, but would like to explore how feminism destroyed the courtship that much more directly led to marriage and family formation. Born in 1961, I experienced firsthand the revolution from moms at home to moms at work, from courting commitment to courting instability. I've toyed with writing a memoir called My Dumb Feminist Life, which would examine the choices I made in fealty to feminist narratives and how self-sabotaging so much of it was.
So Darleen is pulling back the curtain on a reality that completely contradicts the victimhood narrative modern women love to use to justify why they're single, childless, and bitter at brunch.
Well, one of the things that struck me about that particular conversation was, it resonates because I wound up childless myself and it wasn't necessarily intentional, but I also noticed, and I'm thinking you're all a little younger than I am, right? When I was struck by how the dialogue was, I couldn't find a good man. I couldn't find a man who would commit. And this is how I wound up like this.
This is where it gets good. Darleen holds feminism and women themselves accountable for the chaos we're seeing today. Finally, somebody said it. So now let's get into how she used to fall for the feminist lie and what changed. Now it's time for us to get into this and do what we gotta do. Because we men, ain't we? We men, ain't we?
But I was thinking, I know what happened because I lived through that change. And it's sort of like, if you look at the French Revolution, the people who were coming of age right as the Reign of Terror starts would know something more than the people who are living in the aftermath and grappling with that. So my trajectory, my coming of age completely coincides with the sexual revolution when things really changed. And I like to say, and I have said to my students probably at my own risk that TV in the 60s was very family oriented, very much about being a good civic citizen. The morals were all, I would say, fairly universal, how to be a good person, how to handle the town bully, Mayberry RFD, family. And then we start getting into the relaxing the codes, and now there's murder and single police women, Charlie's Angels, which was a huge influence on me, and it just completely changed.
See, this is why we go hard on media here. Movies, TV shows, Netflix, It's all programming. Literally, you keep feeding women images of the boss babe who don't need no man. What do you expect? It becomes part of their wiring. And then we wonder why relationships are collapsing left and right.
And by the time I reach my adolescence, now there is abortion. And I even remember I was sitting on the toilet when I heard on a talk show in the next room that my mother was listening to that now, Roe v. Wade has been passed. And I remember thinking, oh, good, I can do whatever I want.
Wow.
And we also had the pill. And so, it's brand new. And when something is brand new, people tend to react to it, overreact to it. It really completely liberated me and my friends as teenagers into basically having a lot of casual sex. Mm-hmm. And it even seemed that you were supposed to, like the arbiters of correct opinions were imposing this on us, because I remember asking myself, and I know other women have said the same thing, why am I doing this? I don't really like it. It makes me feel bad. I'm also, regardless, sort of garnering a kind of a dubious reputation. But then I'm wired like that, and I can't seem to extricate myself from this habit. And all of the advertising, much of what I was reading in teen magazines was sort of promoting this, you don't have to live like your mother and you can live like a man.
Of course, promiscuity became part of pop culture. Casual sex is now a status symbol. If you're not out here liberated and running through situationships, apparently you're boring. Let's not forget, Cosmopolitan magazine led this movement hard, with Helen Gurley Brown waving the flag for Sex and the City long before HBO did. And guess what? Traditional women? Silenced, out of style, because apparently being grounded, loyal, and family-oriented doesn't sell magazines or get views.
I am woman, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore.
That song, that was the anthem. Hear me roar. Pop culture. This song used to drive women wild.
No one's ever gonna keep me down again.
I had 5 friends that I hung out with in high school. We called ourselves the Coyotes.
The Coyotes? This is pure gold.
And our motto was, we can do what men do and we can do it even better. And we would drive down the main street hooting and whistling at guys and, drinking a lot and getting ourselves in all kinds of sexual trouble. And recently we a few of us got together and we were reflecting on that, and we realized that this was a very short window of time, because AIDS comes along in 1983 and changes everything. So I would say that people born between, say, 1958 and 1965 are the people whose life story sort of goes alongside this change.
The Coyotes were riding the hot dog carousel like it was the Summer Olympics. What were you doing, Grandma? Grandma was in the streets. All in the name of freedom. But freedom has consequences. And Darlene's about to explain why trying to have sex like men doesn't work. Not for women.
But, in my generation, we were fumbling around, not knowing how to get what we deep inside really wanted. And the men were like, well, now that I don't have to do this anymore, I'm not going to do it anymore. So I'm going to go back to suggesting that it was women who gave men permission to be irresponsible. And the lack of community oversight also lends itself to that. You are alone in the middle of nowhere and no one's really watching you. And I'm not going to say that that's great either, but if we have to decide what really is better for everyone, perhaps it would be more connection around community and not politics. That we are all families that live in this place, and we collectively want to create a really nice place for us to thrive in. And in essence, that is the kind of place that I grew up in.
Exactly. Why buy the cow when you're getting the milk for free? No strings attached. And on top of that, she got the nerve to bring an attitude too? This is why rules exist, why values matter. Because when women hand over the goods without requirements, men stop showing up for the relationship. Simple. Supply and demand, baby. When something's too easy, it loses its value. Women thought they could do whatever they wanted, ride the hot dog carousel till their 30s, and then magically cash in their body count for a husband. But that reset button, it doesn't exist. Now, they're running to the femininity movement like a Black Friday sale at Zara, hoping to attract the same high-value men they gave nothing to.
Many of the men in my community love their wives, couldn't live without them. And so when we talk about the leaving, I think actually the men really are wounded by this. And I fell into the manosphere for a while. And just like, what Benjamin with all the detransitioners and the men whose wives just turned on a dime on them, and then they end up having to pay child support. And that's another reason why, men are hesitant to have children now and get married. This also happened to a relative of mine. He got married, and after she had a baby, she said, she came from a wealthy family. She said, now that I have my baby, I don't need you anymore. He was absolutely devastated by this. So, that's the other thing I would like to, a narrative got us here, let's say, and a narrative will get us out. I think men do love women. We have forgotten that. If I could quote one of my comments from my essay, one of the greatest tragedies of the feminist project is denying how much men have loved and cherished women and their work. It's women who decided that our work was not valuable anymore. It's women who actually decided that being a mother was a form of drudgery. But, any kind of hard work is a form of drudgery. I've been a professor for years, and nothing is more drudgery than grading essays. I would much rather be washing dishes and, frankly, changing diapers.
And here it is. The manosphere didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's a reaction. Cause and effect. When men get demonized, disposable, and disrespected, guess what? They built their own space. It's not about women leaving men. It's what happens after. When men get divorce graved in court, lose access to their kids, get hit with false allegations, and have their reputations trashed for sport. And women, they move on with zero consequences. Modern women don't love men the way men love women. They love security, status, and options. And when the environment gives them that, they see no reason to settle for average, even if they themselves are average. And yes, most women are average.
Say, if I define patriarchy and matriarchy, what we used to live in, and what I would like to see us sort of navigate our way back to, is we actually weren't in a patriarchy. There was a patriarchy and there was a matriarchy, and the women were matriarchally running this domain, and the men were patriarchally running this other domain. And the men returned home to the matriarchal domain, and they might have had some say, and some say, and they might have made final decisions about some things, although I'm not sure, because when I look back anecdotally on what was going on in the houses in my neighborhood, though the women were running the show, and the men were doggedly going out to work and bringing home the paycheck. I actually think in the so-called patriarchy, the men got the probably the raw end of the stick in a lot of ways. When my father was dying of cancer, he still had to go to work and support our family. And my mother was doing some work at home, but my father was the primary breadwinner all along, even when he was sick. And to see him, after going through chemo, get up on a 20 degree below zero day and hack the car out of the snow and go to work, while my mother's sitting curled up in the warm living room reading a book. I mean, I just, don't see how it really was as unequal, really, yes and no, paradoxically, right?
Exactly what Esther Villar laid out in The Manipulated Man. Men were painted as the oppressors, but in reality, they were being used financially, emotionally, socially. Feminists don't tell you these stories of how men have worked themselves to death to support their families. And here comes Matthew Hussey, the Simjutsu master, making a career of telling women how special they are while ignoring men's real struggles.
Do we actually want to go back to a time when it was enough that a man having a job and not being violent gave him bragging rights as a good husband? What are you talking about? I put food on the table. I never laid an hand on you. I treat you like a queen.
This oppressive narrative to cater to women. But men have woken up. Why work yourself into the grave to provide for someone who doesn't respect you, who won't cook for you, and sees you as a stepping stone? Even the simp jutsu masters have to admit men aren't attracted to the modern woman. But hey, a man's gotta eat, right? Bottom line, men built this society. They made it safe, convenient, and advanced. But the more they gave, the less they got. Gratitude turned into entitlement. Respect turned into demands. And cooperation turned into control. So men are bouncing. They are done playing a game where they lose by default. Let's close this out with one final piece of red meat.
It's interesting that you mentioned the one-child policy, but also, and I had another thought. God, I lost it. The one-child policy. I mainly was teaching Chinese nationals, and it came up in class. This student was saying something about the one-child policy. I said, well, what's interesting is that it was forced on you, but propaganda convinced us to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Man, that's where we working. Protect yourself at all times. This video has officially been highlighted.